done whole parts.
Oh, they take little tiny pieces.
There won't even be a scar.
I think I found the problem.
Oh, come on, you're the doctor.
Everyone, lights out and quiet.
Welcome back, wayward movie watchers, to the Media Morgue, your one-stop shop for movie news and reviews. My name is Justin Winley, and I'm here once again alongside my fellow surgeons of cinema,
Daniel Mette,
Zack, Palomo,
Wes Goodrich.
Each episode, we review a popular film before diving into a pre-selected pick by one of us, which is faded, foreign, forgotten, or any permutation of those three. Today's consensus choice is the 2021 Monsterverse entry Godzilla vs. Kong, directed by Adam Wingard. And in the second segment, Danny will lead us through 1984 cult stoner classic Repo Man, directed by Alex Cox. We also get into TV and video games, though, and we have a little bit of both today in our news section. So we've got a bunch to talk about, a lot of news happening recently, 3 trailers that we're going to talk a little bit about, and 2 announcements, TV announcements.
I think it would be ironic if our first story was about The Last of Us.
Hey.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing much to really say here. They just announced that they were going to be shooting all through 2021
and into 2022, which is the year after this one. It's the sequel to this year. Yeah, they've been filming like just for a year straight, which is like crazy. Pedro Pascal's casting, I know that we're happy with. Hopefully this time gives that little girl they chose to play Ellie some time to grow up already. For fuck's sake,
right?
Yeah, I feel like the pictures they're using are from Game of Thrones, which was already like 3 years ago. So I feel like she probably looks the age of the character, but they're like, this is the only thing you know her from.
Until she's 32.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I looked her up, and I mean, everything I see, she just looks like a child. Ellie's supposed to be jumping up on people and like stabbing them, like shooting them in the face and stuff, and I just don't really see her doing it. I don't know.
It'll be interesting. I think that we are definitely in an era of like the whole, the obviously Pedro Pascal is hot off The Mandalorian, which is very much this same sort of like carrying a precious human life across vast expanses to a destination, right? We just saw Logan, which a lot of people compared to The Last of Us, with Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane. So it's a popular kind of like dynamic right now. Yeah, I think.
It was huge in games a couple years ago, and now it's kind of transferring over. I mean, the same year The Last of Us came out, BioShock Infinite. It was like the same thing. You're like a grizzled, like old man who's kind of transporting a younger woman. And The Walking Dead, Telltale's Walking Dead game, that was a year before, and that's pretty much the same dynamic as Joel and Ellie.
Right. Interesting that you mentioned The Walking Dead, because AMC has announced that the 11th and final season of the show is debuting in August.
Robert Kirkman really was like, I'm not going to fumble this bag, and immediately pushed Invincible into production, which is like his other big comic that's like 800 issues. Like it's Walking Dead and Invincible are like parallel, and then he was like, whatever, I'm gonna do this other thing now.
Good decision.
I know for a fact that Danny, Zack, and I have all watched The Walking Dead, but like, what was the point for each of you that you gave up? Where was the end for you?
Listen, I stayed the full season after Glenn got his head bashed, and then I dropped it. It was becoming too like Negan empathetic, like too Negan centric. I just couldn't really.
Right. Well, the finale of the 10th season is a prequel episode. The last episode of the 10th season is called Here's Negan.
His cancer wife is Lucille, right?
It's about how he apparently had an affair with her sister, which is supposed to make us care about him more. I'm not sure.
Is this where he finds out that you can't beat cancer, but you can beat people to death with a spike?
Yeah, I think so.
Because that would be like a pretty cool prequel story.
Yeah, it's I know, Zach, we spent a lot of time kind of lamenting Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance as Negan because it seems to be trapped in like the same 3 body movements,
the same
like,
vocal
the
beats,
same syntax.
Backwards lean.
Yeah,
yeah. He was he was scary and cool and effective in his first appearance, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And then after that, he just does the same exact thing for every scene he's in, and it gets tired.
Yeah.
He's also not in a bunch of episodes because they like couldn't afford him. So he like since his like first appearance, he's in like 5 episodes or so a season.
Yeah,
like 2 or 3 episodes go by where we don't even hear from Negan, and it's just Jeffrey Dean Morgan is like not an A-lister, but he's like a B-lister, I guess, which is even too expensive for The Walking Dead.
Yeah, for most for most Walking Dead actors, that was the thing that made them. You know, they weren't necessarily known prior, but Jeffrey Dean had a bit of.
Some of them are great. I mean, thank God Steven Yeun was on that show.
Steven Yeun is going to be a huge star now.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's going to be nominated, I think, right? Or no,
he is nominated.
He is nominated.
For
Minari,
Best Actor. For Minari, which
It's
might be our next consensus choice. Stay tuned. But
I love him in Burning. He's a fantastic.
That's his best performance, I think. I think Burning is an excellent
really
performance.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite movies.
And he is the main character in Invincible.
He is. He's Mark Grayson in Invincible.
He is Mark Grayson. I love him. And everyone should watch that show.
That show is like sky high.
That's the animated one on Prime, right?
Yeah. The comics are like sky high with like a broken nose. Like that's the pitch.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. It's speaking of Steven Yeun, I think for me the turning point, because I was already in and out by this time, but like when they did that fake out with Glenn just to kill him later.
That was ridiculous.
Awful.
They did not know what they were doing. It's like one guy came up with him dying, and the next guy immediately had to come up with some convoluted way for him to survive somehow.
Yeah, I mean, it got to a point where suddenly I was following like Tara, and I don't, you know, and it was like just an episode about Tara, and I was like, why do I care about this? Where are the others?
I watched that episode with my dad. I was like, yeah, it's the zombie show. He's like, okay, cool. And it's this episode where you're following around this frumpy lady as she like talks to a beachside community and like doesn't do anything. Like, okay,
yeah, there's nothing happening.
I guess the show is this.
Yes, it's
well, that was a problem even in season 2. In season 2, like Shane is like jacking off on the farm for like 3 episodes. And I mean, just nothing happens for like hours and hours at a time in season 2. That's always been a problem. I mean, post season 1, just like ordering too many episodes and not knowing what to do.
And if we spend any more time on it, we'll go stir crazy.
No, people are already bored listening to this. Let's move on.
Let's jump on to the trailer talk, my man.
From Walking Dead right into fucking Space Jam. Am I right? Good transition. So this is just a dick measuring contest at this point between like Disney and Warner Bros. And the companies that have all the IPs. Do you guys remember that Wreck-It Ralph movie where they go into the internet and they're like, "What's the coolest place on the internet?" Well, Disney.com, obviously, and they see a bunch of X-wings flying around. It's just like what company has more IPs. Clearly, Disney does. Because Warner Bros. Literally put the fucking Droogs from A Clockwork Orange in like the crowd. We all saw this, right?
Yeah.
I think the weird thing about this Space Jam trailer, which I'm excited for, like I won't even cap. Like it has LeBron James, and Don Cheadle in it, and I'm like, it's fine, you got me, whatever.
Can we talk about what Don Cheadle's role in this movie is?
He's the internet, Justin. Who cares? Justin, do you care? Do you care who Don Cheadle is playing, or do you want to see Don Cheadle?
Also, this movie got announced like years and years ago. Like
it did. Well, I remember, Dan. I remember the cool thing about this movie. The thing that was really exciting was it got announced in high school when I was in high school and we were in high school with LeBron.
I remember like sitting at the lunch table talking to my friends about it.
No, but then the idea was that Terrence Nance from Random Acts of Flyness was supposed to be the director, and then he dropped. But I still think he has a writing credit. But just thinking about like what that movie would have been.
Well, they dropped him because he was going to give Lola Bunny fat tits, and they couldn't have that.
You're right.
That's why they dropped him.
The redesign of Lola Bunny has caused a firestorm on the internet because
we need to go outside. Because we need to go outside.
Yeah. I mean, this is so strange to me. I think I like the original Space Jam movie for what it is, but I also remember like being very disturbed by it at points. And yeah, like seeing all these characters, like, you know, Yogi Bear and Mr. Magoo coming from the Warner Brothers IP. It's just embarrassing. There was also in the actual basketball tournament scene, I'm not joking, there was a person dressed up as Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze standing behind.
I saw that.
Don Cheadle.
Well, I mean, that to me is more fitting than having like Alex and his droogs from Clockwork Orange.
Right.
I mean, because Batman and Robin is like a dumb movie, so I mean, it fits more than showing like the Dark Knight Batman, for example, or like the Heath Ledger Joker, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but that's Space Jam. I think it's coming out in. When is it coming? I don't know if it'll make it on this show. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
It will be making it on this show.
I guess if we're talking about Godzilla,
I don't know what you guys are talking about. We will be talking about Space Jam.
Great plan.
The next trailer we have up is Loki, coming from Marvel. Marvel's Doctor Who is another good way to refer to this, because it looks like that's kind of the vibe they're going with. Loki, a version of Loki from the past, has been kidnapped, well, not kidnapped, but arrested by the time police.
This is only a couple hours old. I missed it.
Damn, the Loki trailer?
I thought you were talking about the one that came out a couple like weeks ago. I was like, the fuck?
Oh no! There was a new one that just dropped this morning.
Damn.
And it's got some pretty cool looking stuff in it. The I guess the concept is basically he's on probation and he has to work off his sentence by like helping these people fix time crimes or whatever, which is cool enough. I'll be the first to admit that when I saw the trend of like the Tom Hiddleston Stan Empire rising, I was kind of annoyed. And it happened after Avengers. I think Avengers is kind of the best that he is throughout this. Like, I think that's
interesting.
The original Thor and the first Avengers movies are like his peak for me. After that, he just becomes like Loki the rogue, but Loki the tormented villain is kind of more interesting to me.
Do you remember in Thor: The Dark World when they put him in like a sleeveless hoodie? And they have him dressed like a skater boy, and he's like kind of scowling. He's got his hair in front of his face.
Yeah.
They knew that Hiddleston had some stance.
I don't know. I think he's a lot of fun in. I mean, this is not discounting what you're saying. I think
everyone's fun in Ragnarok.
Yeah, I think he's fun in Ragnarok.
Everyone is.
But also Ragnarok is a redemption story for him. It's not really about him being evil. Right. It's about him being a bad brother and having to connect. Yeah. I think the thing that Taika Waititi talks about most in that movie, other than like the weird filmmaking stuff he's doing in that movie, which is dope, is like the idea that the movie is just like a brother's story. Like two brothers are going to save their house from a burglar being broken in to their house, which is like cool. Like I think that's a good way to end that cycle of movies. But I like this. I like this trailer.
The other interesting thing about Tom Hiddleston in the role is that he has remained largely committed to it in a way that a lot of the other MCU actors have not. Yeah. Like a lot of them got to the point where they were like, I'm rich enough that you cannot force me to put on this wig, Chris Hemsworth. So I'd like Thor's hair to be cut so that I don't have to wear this, this hot wig.
That was his idea?
I'm almost positive that it was like a collaborative thing where he said, hey, if we're loosening up the character, can we not, can we change up his appearance too? But Loki doesn't necessarily have that option because they could have given Loki a fade
that's
too.
What people know him for. Yeah.
Right. But the long black hair is part of the appeal.
I was going to say there was a video from not too long ago. it was from a news channel where Tom Hiddleston had come on, and he was promoting like a movie where he plays like a country singer or whatever. And after they do the interview with him, they bring him on to do the weather, and they introduce him as Loki. They're like, "Here's Loki with the weather." Yes. And it's like right after he was doing that like normal interview, and then he puts on the Loki voice and like does the weather. It's like that's kind of he's the only one of these actors who they could get to do that. Like they wouldn't introduce Robert Downey Jr. as here's Iron Man with sports, you know?
The cast is pretty stacked. I mean, aside from Owen Wilson, we also have Gugu Mbatha-Raw is in this. Yes. We have the actress from Lovecraft Country's in this. We just have a really good cast. Marvel just is cashing checks everywhere. They're like, "Hey, you want to walk on and do a Marvel show for $1 million?"
By this point, I'd say like most A-listers have done some kind of comic book something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when they got Tilda Swinton, it was like, well, really when they got Anthony Hopkins, it's all about how these movies are pitched individually. Because that first Thor movie is Shakespeare. So you can come to Anthony Hopkins and be like, "Hey, want to be Odin in this thing?" And you can sit down for most of it. And like that's
now they have like Angelina Jolie in Eternals.
In Eternals, they brought her out of retirement.
In a comic book movie, That's like that'd be like seeing Brad Pitt in one of these, and
we will.
Like he was.
And we will.
I'm surprised he hasn't already.
No, he was in Deadpool. He was Zack. He was in
Deadpool.
Yeah. That's right.
He's the invisible guy who gets a shot at the end. So technically, I mean, it has like everyone that you never thought you'd see in a movie like this.
Yeah. So it would have to be someone like that. For the last minute and change here, let's talk about Spiral. I know, Dan, you just did a Saw franchise rewatch.
I rewatched all the movies recently. I'm nostalgic for all those. I have a lot of nostalgia for them. I saw them every Halloween as a kid with my dad. And for the ones where he didn't go with me, I remember I would like sneak into the theater with my friends, but I saw them like every Halloween. And you know, not all of them are strong. Quite a few of them are pretty forgettable. But the original and the first sequel, I'd even argue the fourth one are all pretty solid. I mean, the first one's like a classic that I love like showing people because Justin, you know what the twist is. I don't think Wes and Zack do, but the ending of the first Saw movie is like, oh my god. It's like the best twist I've ever seen in a movie. But now Chris Rock has kind of taken the helm. He's continuing this tradition lately of comedians taking over classic horror franchises and rebooting them. David Gordon Green, who I think we like. I like him. He did Pineapple Express, Superbad, all these stoner comedies, and then he took over Halloween. And he's going to be doing the next one also that comes out this year. It's ironic that I'm bringing this up, actually, because he is a huge fan of Repo Man. And Repo Man makes an appearance in Halloween 2018. They're watching it on the TV.
I mean, I mean, Dan. I mean, we love horror, so like, this is our bag. But I think a lot of. I mean, we also have Jordan Peele. Obviously, was a comedian for 20 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point.
And then became a horror. But I think it's because horror and comedy are the same genre. They're just flipped back and forth. You know what I mean? Like you're building, you're designing it the same.
Sam Raimi, when he makes a horror movie, he's making a comedy at the same time.
Yeah.
His horror films are comedies, they're horror comedies.
That's why we love. That's why the two of us love Raimi and Wes Craven, is because the two of those guys are making comedies, but they're also making horror movies. You know what I mean? So it makes sense to me.
Yes, but Spiral. Listen, kind of funny hearing Chris Rock raise his voice.
He does. He is kind of goofy. When he's, I don't trust anyone in this precinct. It's like, okay, Chris. Okay.
He has one solid delivery, I think, in that whole trailer, which is when he finds that box and he's like, "Get everybody out of here."
Yeah.
You know, I was like, that was cool.
That was good.
Cool.
Chris Rock, and obviously needs to outdo the traps from the previous films, which is a pitfall that Saw's always fallen into. They always have to outdo the previous traps. But it's become this like detective procedural again, which is what the original film is. In the original film, you don't know who Jigsaw is, and it's all these. It's like an Easter egg hunt, and that's what this is kind of returning to, because they're not using the Tobin Bell voice, the raspy I want to play a game, and now it sounds like a teenage girl is putting her voice through a scrambler or something like that. It doesn't even have the fucking iconic puppet, the spirals on his cheeks, which is like the one thing that everybody knows. Like for normies, Saw is a series about a puppet that came to life and is kidnapping people and putting them in traps. If you've never seen these movies, that's probably what you think they're about. And it's not even using that. And the puppet was on all the posters, all the trailers. I mean, it's trying to really start from scratch, you know?
Yeah. I am actually looking forward to it. I think I'm gonna make a point to watch the original Saw movie and then watch this one, and then anything else I'll see how I feel. But we have spent a lot of time on news, so we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna come back and talk about the big monkey fighting big lizard. Hey. Keep it right here. All right, and we're back. We are going to jump right into everyone's favorite monster fighting movie of late, Godzilla vs. Kong, directed by Adam Wingard, just dropped on March 31st on streaming. I don't think any of us went to see it in theaters, but it was out on March 25th in theaters. So
you know what? I'm glad I didn't. I wanted to. I was trying to get people together to come and see it with me. I just couldn't justify paying IMAX prices when it's like on my TV.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to begin with to justify IMAX prices when the movie is just like out. But like if it's basically free on HBO, like what do you?
Right. Usually, I would advocate for us to do like obviously a soft opening, no spoilers, but there's not that much plot here. You guys know what the situation is. So spoiler warning heavy right now.
Yeah.
If you're really invested in the outcome of this super heavyweight match. And we're just gonna crack it open, baby. I will have the Wikipedia page open for our reference. Basically, I mean, whoever wants.
Well, that's good, because maybe you can explain to me what the fuck is going on with Ghidorah's skull and the robot. Okay, so what I understand is that from the energy sample they pulled from Middle Earth, for lack of a better, I mean, I don't know what it's actually called, but I've been calling it
Hollow
Earth. Hollow Earth, there you go. They pulled that energy sample out and then injected it into the mech Godzilla they built that has Ghidorah's skull, and that made Ghidorah possess it?
It's using King Ghidorah's brainwaves.
Right.
It's using his brainwaves. It's similar to the Batman versus Superman thing where Zod's body is animating Doomsday.
Right.
Because of the telepathic link that Ghidorah had with his three heads, right? That was the justification.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, what it says here is actually
that wasn't clear to me.
Basically the overview of this movie, just to give y'all something to hold on to. Godzilla is upset because basically there's a copyright infringement issue going on. There's another Godzilla being built, one that's mechanized and controllable, and he's like, hey, I built up my brand over 2 million years. I'm not going to let some freaking robo-quad come around and tell me what's what. So he's blowing stuff up, and the humans are like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
There's this company called Apex.
Wait, okay, so hold on. So in the beginning, that is Mechagodzilla?
No, that's real Godzilla.
I thought that was
not even. No, yeah.
That's real Godzilla. But what he's doing is because he knows, how in all these movies he can sense where his enemies are, and he like is hunting them.
Yeah.
So this is the situation where like he senses that really what he's sensing is Ghidorah being reanimated in some sense, and he's chasing after it to try to stop it, but they keep, I guess, moving the mecha. Yeah. While that's happening, Kong is in a containment facility on Skull Island. He's grown to his full size or something close to it, I guess. And they're like, hey, we need Kong to lead us to the Hollow Earth because he can help us get the energy signature that we need to power the Mecha Godzilla to fight back against the kaiju, because inherently, like the humans having a kaiju they can control is like not the worst idea, since kaiju are just popping up now. But the bad idea is that they used,
they just always give it to corrupt like billionaires and stuff.
That too. This guy who was just the most telegraphed evil
mustache
person.
twirling on. Oh, I know. It was obnoxious.
In any movie.
Twirling his mustache and petting his cat and wearing his eye patch and what's another one? Spinning his chair. Devilish.
So that's basically the plot, and then you also have these human characters that are kind of connected to either creature as we move forward. But honestly, the fun thing to talk about is like the fight scenes, because that's what we're here for. I mean, I had myself a kaiju weekend. I texted you all about it. I watched this. I watched the original Godzilla 1954. I watched the original King Kong 1933. Classic. And I rewatched Godzilla 2014.
Also good.
And I think that
Justin, you should have watched Shin Godzilla, dude. That's the best Godzilla movie. Yeah, that one's actually genuinely very
I've
good.
saw the trailers for it.
It's
he's
really
like
creative.
terrifying looking, and the biggest that he's ever been.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's like evolving over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
It kind of is relevant to the contagion that we were just experiencing. That's how they treat him. They treat him like he's a natural disaster. He just keeps getting bigger and more powerful, and it becomes
and he can't
more
really be
overwhelming.
stopped. He can only be
And
avoided.
it's shot like it's like a quasi found footage thing where they're treating it like what would this look like if it was really happening, like a Godzilla fight, and not a fight, but I mean, normally in the movies when it's two kaijus going after one another, it's just like the attention is on them fighting and maybe some aerial shots of like people fleeing the cities. But Shin Godzilla is all like ground up.
Yeah.
Like, what would the government do? Would people flee? Would they stay in their homes and like accept their fate? Like, it's really dark. I mean, it taps into kind of the breadth of how someone would react to something like the Hiroshima bombing or like that hurricane that swept New Orleans.
Katrina.
Yeah. And like some people flee and some people stay because they don't know what else to do. Like Shin Godzilla is like a natural disaster movie, really, with like a kaiju wrapping.
Yeah. The one of the things that popped out to me when I was because like I said, I rewatched Godzilla 2014, and I think that like obviously these movies, just these three movies, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong, have changed very drastically. But 2014 is the most concerted effort as far as American remakes to capture that original intended vibe, so to speak, that intended meaning and weight behind Godzilla.
Disagree.
Oh, do you?
So you're saying Godzilla? You're saying it matches the original's intent?
No. Well, I don't. Well, no, I don't think it does it. But I think that it's the close. I mean, especially compared to obviously the 1998 version, which is just a joke, and either of the sequels.
Well, I mean, you think it's trying to?
Yeah, I think like for example.
As horrific as
for
that
example,
first one. Okay.
For the character of Godzilla, it's him. I mean, in America, we've always gendered him as a him, but in Japan, they use it.
Yeah.
But for the character of Godzilla, in that original, in the 1954 original, is an hour and a half long. Godzilla doesn't show up for 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. I timed it, right? And that's cool. That's great. In the 2014, it's 2 hours, 30 minutes longer. He doesn't show up until the 50-minute mark, 56 minutes or roughly. There's a similar restraint in terms of showing Godzilla. Obviously, we kind of memed about it when the movie came out because like you want to see the fights, especially in America. We're used to seeing things blow up and get thrown, but they hold off on that even through the very end. And his actual, he's not evil. He's not like this totally just vacuous, mindless beast that's just stomping on everything in its path, and he has a clear motivation,
which is what I prefer.
Right, and that's like, and because in the original movies, he's yes, like Danny said, he's a nuclear metaphor. He's
a natural disaster.
And he's a reckoning with not only the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but also Japan's feelings of guilt for their participation in World War II. And their allegiances, you know what I mean? So it's not just like, look at this terrible thing that happened to us. It's also like, how much of it do we deserve based on what we participated So
Well, I
Godzilla
mean, I think
2014
I.
doesn't get that
I'm
deep. I'm
sorry.
sorry, Wes.
I
Godzilla 2014 doesn't get that deep. But in terms of trying to like mythologize Godzilla, it's better than 98.
No, it's a
Yeah.
serious attempt at the mythologizing. I'll agree with that there. Well, I mean, anything is better than 98. You know, that's not really a high bar. I think, and I had this problem even back when I saw it. I know that this franchise is split down the
Mhm.
middle. Like exactly half the movies, Godzilla is horrifying. He's a monster, and you need to be afraid of him. There's a Godzilla movie from the '80s, Godzilla, and they took it really
Mm.
seriously, and it's like the same intent behind the original, where he's not fighting another monster. He's just like this disaster that's happening to the city, and the destruction
Mhm.
in his wake. People are traumatized, and it's not that there are like fun moments, but it's like taken seriously like the original. To your point, Justin, the 2014 film knows that you're excited for Godzilla.
Yeah.
Or I guess to counter your point is what I mean.
Mhm.
When he opens that one Muto's mouth and does the atomic breath into it, like
Yeah.
they know people are gonna cheer. And when I saw that movie in IMAX, everyone clapped, like they loved it, they thought it was great. Everyone was cheering for Godzilla, and then at the end, it's like Godzilla, savior of our city, and he disappears into the
Yeah.
water, and you're supposed to be like, yeah, that was great. But watch the original, like they have survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings like playing burn victims in the
Right.
burn unit. Like they're taking this seriously. Godzilla is supposed to be scary, so it is taking the mythologizing seriously. And I agree that there's a lot of effort and care put into that, but Godzilla really shouldn't be used as like a crowd pleaser when you're trying to make like a menacing, like really serious Godzilla reboot. I
Mm.
don't think, unless you're going all the way with that. And this movie, Godzilla versus Kong, definitely goes all the way with just being like a B movie that no one's taking seriously.
Right.
Whereas those prior to, it's like they wanted you to consider what it would be like if this really happened in the world.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wes. I know you had.
I think, I mean, you guys kind of touched on it already, but I think, and I know we kind of jumped over our thoughts on this, but what I found so surreal about this movie, Godzilla versus King Kong, is like, it's so weird what happens when America takes ideas that are critical of America
Mm.
and try to make it
Mm.
crowd pleasing popcorn stuff, which is cool,
Yes,
but like,
yes.
Godzilla is like, as a critique, it's like the fear of America coming in and destroying you. You know what I mean? Like that's the original idea, and that's in the
Yeah.
DNA of the character. Like no matter, that's why the American remakes don't really work,
Mhm.
is because America is almost incapable of being self-critical. But like
Mhm.
something like King Kong is a similar thing. Like King Kong is literally, it was a racial caricature that was about
Yeah.
anxieties of like black men coming in and like raping white women. You know what I mean? So like we see these two like anxiety monsters
Mm.
completely divorced from their origin points,
Just use
which
this
is fine.
popcorn fodder.
Which is like
stupid
fine.
and punch each other, and it's like, oh, okay,
Right.
this was always.
And I get, and look, it looks good. Like the fighting looks good. It doesn't look as good as it
No, it
probably
does.
would have been on
Oh my God.
IMAX because
The lighting in that city in Hong Kong, all the greens and purples, holy shit!
it looks it looks
amazing.
good. It looks good. But I mean it probably, there's something going on with the CGI. It's probably the conversion. They probably didn't have enough time to convert it over. But like it looks good. But the science stuff, like the insistence on taking these amazing actors, and we have like an amazing cast of actors in this,
Mhm.
like Brian Tyree Henry, Rebecca Hall,
He's the best
Xander
character.
Skarsgård. Like we
Rebecca
have these
Hall's
Little
amazing.
New Zealander boy. New Zealander boy who name's Mick
Oh,
Godzilla.
the
the
boy
kid
from,
from Hunt for the
Zack and
Wilder.
Boy.
No, that's
Zack and
Mickey
Boy.
Godzilla.
No, Hunt for the Wilder
Yeah.
people.
But like we have this amazing bench of actors just saying gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I don't care
Yeah.
about this, guys. Like it's, you guys are too good to be in this movie. I hope the check was good. You know.
Well, let me.
It's just weird seeing these monsters just kind of being puppeted around without any
Yes.
kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and now before we dig into that more, I do want to know, Zach, your thoughts about the movie overall, because I know that you and I, jokingly but not that jokingly, have gone back and forth about our preferences for Godzilla or Kong, just in the purely physical matchup sense. But
Yeah.
what did you think about the movie?
It was basically exactly what I was expecting, right? You know, I mean, I just assumed the humans were going to be annoying and pointless, and I wouldn't care about them, and I would space out. And then we get to the fighting, and the fighting actually, I think, like exceeded my expectations. I just thought the choreography was so good, and yes, I went into this rooting for Kong, but that was also like I knew that in the end, Godzilla has hacks. He's a laser lizard with like armored skin. Like he doesn't. Kong does not stand a chance. But that didn't stop me from rooting for him because he's a sweet boy that just wants to be home. You know, and I think the fight kind of just they went exactly how I thought it would. You know, Kong should never beat Godzilla in the water, and Godzilla did exactly what I thought he was going to do, which was he tried to drown him. And somehow bombing both of them saved Kong's life. Like they bombed.
Yeah, they sent in the. They sent in the. I think the oxygen destroyer is in the second one, but depth charges is what they are, and they like obliterate the water, and somehow like Kong is good. Yeah, it's strange. I wanted to piggyback real quick before I move on to some other tidbits that I thought were cool as far as the movie. Because I going into watching the original King Kong, 1933, I was aware of how of like the racial overtones that a lot of people have ascribed to it, right? And they are overtones. But I also was aware that the directors have like vehemently denied that was part of the intention. And what I read that they actually were trying to do, apparently one of the directors was like out and about in New York City, and he looked up at the Empire State Building and he saw like a plane flying, and he just started thinking about like industrialization. Like actually, apparently the movie is meant to be a metaphor for the loss of of industrialization. And I mean, I see that because to your point, to counter your point, rather, we're doing a lot of countering today. What I understood him to be saying was that, that I guess that whether he was scared of it, I don't know, but he wanted to make a comment on it. Point just being that like when King Kong dies, you know, 'twas beauty killed the beast. I don't know if like that would track with it being like a fear of the black man, you know, taking the white woman, if it's a sad thing when he dies. But I don't know, like that's what we can talk about, right? Because he gets killed and then it's like this whole mournful thing. But
the most basic thing to take away from it, and it's how I felt about it since I was a kid, is just that it's about parts of the world that haven't been touched by, you know, humanity and stuff, and then humans coming in and fucking it up. And to me, the point of King Kong was always that we're the monsters, we're the real savages, for taking this like beautiful creature from its home and exploiting it, you know, and you know, to where it has to revolt, it has to break out and try and find its way home, but it's in the city, doesn't know what to do, and we end up shooting it down. So I mean, if it is, if it was always intended as this race thing where like you have to be afraid of black people, I mean, maybe some of that is there, but it just doesn't really track for me with him being like the misunderstood like hero of it, and us like crying when he dies at the end, you know.
Well, I don't know. I don't think he's. I think it's two things. I think cinema is so. I mean, especially early cinema in the 30s is so entrenched in racism that it slips into everything.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like, even if they didn't mean to do it, like it's there. But I think also, I don't think Kong is the hero of that movie. I think what's her name, Andero?
Yeah.
Whoever, whatever the central figure is, and her boyfriend, they're the main characters. Kong is just a prop, you know, like literally a prop, but also like for the story purposes, he's like the savage who gets brought to America,
right?
And
right. But when they have him chained up, like even in the 30s version, you're supposed to feel bad for him. Like he's the first like character in a film that was like entirely a special effect.
Yes.
And I say that because like you know, we had Metropolis by Fritz Lang, where there's that walking robot woman, but she's not really a character. Like, Kong has characteristics.
Yes.
He's fighting for this woman that he's fallen in love with. He's devastated that he's been betrayed by her. He's confused. He's sad. And in the end, he's in a fit of rage. And that's all conveyed through stop motion and miniatures and, you know, claymation and stuff. And there's a lot of love and care put into that character, like a surprising amount for the 30s, because now we have these CGI characters, I mean, everywhere. But back then, that was like, you know, you would expect them to just like portray him as like the Blob or something, where it's just like this fucking thing that's attacking helpless people, but they don't. Like, Kong he's kind of like a tragic, not hero, but he is like a tragic figure in that film, in that 30s film. I mean,
he serves a similar purpose as like Uncle Tom and Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know what I mean? Which I think is also like not a real guy. Like I think the special effect is great, but I think also there's intentionality. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason Kong doesn't look like a gorilla in that movie. He looks like a guy. Like, his face looks like a guy.
He does have a human.
And A, it's for empathy purposes, but B, it's
we're lagging.
It's also because you know. So I don't know. I think it's a larger conversation, but I also think as we've progressed with King Kong as a character, we've attempted to make him more of a character in his story, which I think is a major thing here. Like, I think he's the main, out of the two of them, he is the monster that is.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
like,
he's more of a character than the humans are a lot of the time. I mean, aside from like Brian Tyree Henry, the rest of them don't really have characteristics. Like, the science people are sciencey, I guess. Millie Bobby Brown is a teenager who listens to podcasts, and her dad gets after her for listening to podcasts. She should listen to the Media Morgue.
She should.
They might not give her so many bad ideas. But yeah, I mean, Kong like is more of a character here than he's ever been. I agree with you, Wes. So much so that Godzilla really, it's not even like a Godzilla movie. Like, until that last like 20 minutes. I mean, Godzilla's just kind of Kong's final boss.
Go ahead, Zach.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, Kong has a more or less fleshed out plot, you know, like, I mean, we follow him, he has an arc, at least, that we can kind of discuss, whereas Godzilla pops in from time to time. He doesn't even get like the last shot of the movie. They give that to Kong just like chilling in Hollow Earth, whereas Godzilla just descends into the sea. And I actually I read that Kong in Hollow Earth was originally supposed to be a, you know, mid-credit scene, and then they were like, no,
weird.
Yeah, exactly. And then they were going to actually end with Godzilla returning to the sea, which, I mean, say what you will about how final that feels, that still makes it more of, okay, this is Godzilla's story, and now it's ending. But ending it with Kong just makes it so it solidifies Kong as really the protagonist of this story, and Godzilla is more of a supporting character.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all at the end when and I guess spoilers. We'll put it.
Who cares? Can't
but
spoil the fucking movie.
At the end, King Kong doesn't even. I mean, King Kong is the one who gets the kill shot. Like right. Godzilla just atomic breaths his super axe, I guess.
His Stormbreaker.
Why give King Kong a melee weapon? He is a giant monkey.
because monkeys use tools.
I don't understand.
Because monkeys
apes use tools.
So that made sense to me. I thought that was good.
Last.
Sure, guys.
They use tools.
Speaking of tools, there is a point in that Hong Kong fight where Kong is hanging off of a building holding like a crane in his hand, and he throws it across the street at another building, and Godzilla's like,
Godzilla,
what? He like Metal Gear Solids him and then jumps on his back. But this does lead to what is my favorite moment, which is when Godzilla executes a perfect Ippon Seonagi judo throw.
Woo!
And that actually ties back into a real fact about the original Godzilla physical performer, Haruo Nakajima, who was a black belt in judo. And so he choreographed all the fight scenes with judo actions. So having Godzilla bite his arm and throw him over his shoulder was like an actual reference to that, which I thought was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys have said, and the endings have always been some of the like wonkiest parts of these movies. But this one felt super rushed. It was like, okay, we have 2 minutes left. Here's Kong where he's supposed to be. Here's Godzilla where he's supposed to be. And that's it.
Yep, and the humans are just also chilling in Hollow Earth now, which I guess is like they can do that without worrying about the other Titans just coming up and killing them,
Right?
Like the monsters that live there.
Right. Yeah. Or well, I guess they come there to visit him. My concern is whether or not it'll be that hospitable for Kong anyway, because there are all these other creatures that want to like contest him as the
king,
Kong, yes.
Well, they know that he's the alpha because he's got that axe and he fucking
because he has a
for
house.
a second like a king on his throne.
Godzilla curb stomped him.
He won Godzilla's respect at the end. There, Godzilla's like, you know what? You're a real one. You're real for helping me take on that robot. Thank you for that. And they go their separate ways.
Well, yeah, and Mecha Godzilla.
I cannot fucking believe that this series. Hold on. This series started with a very serious treatment of Godzilla. He was a hero, but whatever. It was serious about like, yeah, we're like, this is how the Earth would react. The city would be evacuated. All this shit, and now 2 movies later, robot Godzilla walking around fucking grabbing Godzilla's head and bashing him into the side of the skyscraper, and a huge monkey showing up and fucking taking him on with a glowing axe, with a giant glowing axe. The Toho movies took a while to get this like silly.
Yeah, but this is America. We're like.
Well, I mean, but the OG Godzilla movies were always sillier than American Godzilla movies, and now we're like on the same plane.
But not even, because to be fair, in the original Toho movies, we got to Godzilla versus Kong on the 3rd try. So like, it's not such a. But also even that movie is a little bit more serious.
They fight a robot in that one,
but it's more serious in tone.
Yeah,
like that one is at least. We're still like, okay, these characters are not completely divorced from their origin point. This one is like, it may as well be like Bill and John, the monkey and lizard, are beating each other up. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the Marvel treatment also, I mean, like they, it's a cinematic universe and they want to get to Civil War. They want to get to Avengers Infinity War or whatever that is, like that's
Island,
I mean, if you watch the first Iron Man compared to watching Infinity War, you would never believe that we had come this far. And so I think it's the same with any other cinematic franchise. They're just trying to get to the Avengers.
And it also seems to be gearing up for, I mentioned this, but it also seems to be gearing up for a Pacific Rim crossover, because the technology in this movie, like in 2014, they're very clearly using like regular stuff. Like here's an analog nuke, here's like a radio. In this, there's like there's spaceships that can go to the middle of the Earth and flip gravity. What's going on?
There is a middle of the Earth that's been there the whole time and has monsters.
That's like an old science.
Yeah. No, that's a good real conspiracy.
Yeah. That's almost like an H.G. Wells kind of idea.
To the center of the Earth.
Yep. But also, Justin, on the Pacific Rim point, I think this wants to be Pacific Rim so bad, but like what works about Pacific Rim is that it's so. I feel like it wants to be Pacific Rim so bad, like the
coloring
scheme,
the coloring.
But like,
The
thing that makes
neon tubes everywhere, and it's got that bisexual lighting. You guys know what I'm talking about? The blues and the pinks,
the moonlight,
bisexual lighting.
But the thing that makes Pacific Rim so much fun is that it's like simultaneously taking itself super seriously, but also in love with like kaiju and Super Sentai. Like it's like
kaiju shit.
It's doing both. It's and Guillermo del Toro is just amazing. Like he's good at that, but like it's able to be both like kind of fun but also about like anxiety and depression and like losing a family member.
This movie I think this movie did strike kind of a good balance there, because it eventually becomes extremely goofy, but when humans are talking, they're not just like joking up the dialogue to where it's like like the human characters are still taking it seriously enough,
Yeah.
Like it doesn't become like the Joss Whedon Justice League where everyone's just joking because the whole thing is one big joke. Like to the humans there are still stakes, but like when it gets to the fighting, like all right, this is just like a fun time.
Yeah.
I think it rides a pretty even line.
I can agree with that for sure.
With this movie?
Yeah,
because I I just thought Millie Bobby Brown's whole I'm sorry. What did they fly in that went 600 miles per hour, and they were just like sitting there like
they
were.
When they get
what is that? What's that corporation? There's like a big new faceless corporation that can like go through the center of the earth and like out to Hong Kong.
Zach, when they said 600 miles an hour, I was like, you're dead, right? There's no way that your internal organs can survive that speed.
And they're sleeping. They're just
especially
like,
when it's not meant to carry human cargo. I mean, I guess there are like living things in it, but like,
no,
no,
you didn't survive that. You're dead.
This is weird, but like, I kind of thought it would be cool after the fact. We see Mechagodzilla kill the Skullcrawler in the demonstration, but I was like, what if they brought out like Zilla from the 1998 movie? I mean, they wouldn't do that because they're trying to erase it. But like, if Mechagodzilla killed Zilla as like
they already killed him in
they would have to destroy all monsters Final Wars. I thought it was destroy all monsters. He's like a 2-second thing. It's like blink and you miss it. He like jumps up and Godzilla like grabs him and crushes him or something.
Yeah.
He stomps on him, right?
I love it.
Great.
It's funny. But also that Justin, that would be American, Godzilla, the American side of Godzilla acknowledging that like that first attempt was complete bullshit. And I don't think they would ever do that.
Yeah. I came close to rewatching it for this episode, but I didn't have the energy.
There's no point.
It's weird. He doesn't even breathe fire. He like blows explosions at people. It's just
He's a big iguana.
Literally.
Crawls. He doesn't even walk.
But I mean, like we said, not much else to talk about here. I give it 5 Mechagodzillas out of 8.
I give it 27 Millie Bobby Browns out of 34.
That sounds good.
I think I'll take it. I'll give it 50 decapitated Mechagodzilla heads out of 1,000.
Oh, 50 out of 1,000.
Yeah.
That's like a
do that, man.
Yeah.
Zach, do you have a?
Did you guys prepare these little jokes? Did you prepare this? Because I didn't, and I don't have one for you.
No.
I'll give it a 7. I'll give it 7.
Don't try too hard.
No. I got it.
Don't strain yourself.
I'll give it 7 Kong axes out of 11.
There we go.
Great.
No, I don't like that. All right. No, we'll leave that in. But I'm not
it's fine. It's fine. We're moving
on.
Ratings are fake.
Ratings are fake. We have our meme ratings for Godzilla versus Kong. We're going to take a break so that we can recollect ourselves for Repo Man, which is a very different movie. And we'll be back real soon.
Welcome back, everybody. So we've come to the section of our show where one of us chooses a film to talk about and turn each other on to. This is my choice. My first choice for the show is Repo Man, which is an Alex Cox punk musical, part sci-fi comedy from 1984 that counters and critiques Reaganism. So for a little bit of background on this film, Reagan was about to be reelected in '84, and Cox decided he'd make this anti-consumerist, anti-moral majority pulp story about a young punk who joins a scrappy team of Repo Men. The first thing I want to talk about is how this is kind of like the anti-product placement movie. Did you guys notice all the items on grocery stores shelves and inside people's houses and liquor store and stuff? It's all like bland, like black text on like white background, like just everything looks boring. Everything outside of Otto's like circle of punks and blue collar workers is just like boring and bland, and everyone is kind of in like a trance, like his parents are watching a televangelist on the TV who's saying I want your money because God wants your money. He's kind of critiquing all the cornerstones of Reaganism that was so prevalent in the mid 80s.
Right.
I mean, everything is very straight laced and just like white picket fence Americana. I mean, that's what he's like going after with this, and it's like the definitive punk movie because punk was, you know, such a big counterculture at the time because so many like young people wanted to like rebel against that, and this is kind of their calling card in film, you know. Does that make sense? And I mean, it is such a punk movie. The main theme is Iggy Pop with the guitarist from Blondie and the drummer from Sex Pistols. It has music from Black Flag, The Misfits, Suicidal Tendencies, The Circle Jerks, cameos, that shitty lounge act. You know, the doo-wop, shoo-wop, say what? Yeah, those guys. It's very like in touch with like the pulse of like the punk scene at the time. And very anti-Reagan, you know, very surreal, very pulpy. It's kind of like three movies colliding and like breaking into one another until they just have like this explosive ending. There's the story of this punk who becomes a repo man and is trying to learn the ropes of like working on commission and basically stealing cars. Because it is like blue collar work, he is becoming like a blue collar worker, but it's still something that like a young kid would want to do, and it's the old repo man training the younger one. At the same time, there's this guy who's had a lobotomy, and he's driving around a car that we assume has been stolen from like Area 51 or something, and it's got 4 dead aliens in the back. They vaporize people. There's this whole conspiracy going on with the government. I mean, they're trying to track down the car, and eventually they cross paths with Otto and the young girl who's on the run. And yeah, they just kind of culminate into something really unique, something that I don't think it has this quality that's almost like impenetrable. It's like at one moment it's so like gritty and pulpy, and then it's so like surreal and like funny and like perfect to watch when you're high. And it has really like kind of subtle but like, you know, thought-provoking commentary on like the punk scene and how dumb a lot of punks are. I mean, that one kid is like going around robbing stores with his friends, and it's totally something he's doing on his own accord. He just got out of jail. And then he gets shot, he gets gunned down, and he says, I blame society, you know? It's saying Reaganism is bullshit, but also like the punk scene, I mean, these kids are morons too. Like this movie is not really picking a side, it's critiquing everything. You know what I mean?
Right. And I will say, I appreciated, what's his name? Emilio Estevez's character. Otto, right? Yeah, Otto. At the point that his friend is like, "I blame society," he's like, "You're a white suburban punk, just like me. This has nothing to do with society.
It's not that deep."
Yeah.
I mean, I think
lights are going dim.
I think, Dan, I mean, we talked about this and we might continue to, but this reminds me a lot of It Follows, the Carpenter movie, which I don't know. I think it comes out. They live. It Follows, they live. I'm sorry. It follows
the pronouns. They'll trip you up. Yeah.
And also, It Follows is essentially a Carpenter movie. It's just not by him. But They Live. It reminds me a lot of They Live. And I don't know which one comes out first. I think this predates They Live by a couple of years. But
maybe.
I'm
pretty sure They Live is still Reagan America.
No. I mean, I think it's one of the few popcorn films, along with They Live, that is actively critiquing Reaganism. In a very similar aliens sci-fi.
So Repo Man was right when Reagan was about to be reelected, and They Live is like at the end of his second term. They Live is 1988,
and that makes a lot of sense.
So they're both still in that pocket.
No, but I think that's an interesting thing for you to say, because I think they are in conversation in an interesting way. In that way, like I think Repo Man feels slightly scuzzy and apocalyptic, but doesn't actually feel like the world is in hell yet. And They Live is an apocalypse. Like an apocalypse has transpired and we have just not noticed it. You know what I mean? And I think that progression is interesting as well. Especially with, like, we're talking about It Follows comes right at the beginning of the AIDS crisis. You know what I mean? And like literally people are dying, but white America is kind of like,
They Live?
They Live. Why do I keep saying It Follows? Do I keep saying It Follows?
I don't know.
Well, yes, you do, but I think maybe because It Follows is also kind of a metaphorical horror movie that is a lot about like
suburbia.
Yeah, and things you can't see that you paranoia, which
Yeah.
I haven't seen They Live, but I know the premise of it.
We got to bring that on,
and how related it is to to the Red Scare. I'll say, Danny, I think that knowing a lot of this context before I watched the movie might have improved my opinion of it.
Yeah, maybe that's my fault. Maybe that's my fault because I told you to go in blind. I do think it's a good movie to go in blind to because it's so much fun. It's so funny. Like parts of this movie, I laugh so hard at that like my chest hurts. Like this is like the funniest movie ever made in my opinion, or it's way up there. But maybe I should have told you it was critiquing like the white picket Americana of the time and televangelists and consumerism, all that stuff. It's very much on the pulse of that stuff.
Major Kenneth Copeland vibes.
Major.
One of my favorite scenes, actually, when if listeners don't know, Kenneth Copeland is a televangelist who recently kind of made internet waves for saying that he doesn't fly commercial because it's like getting on a long tube filled with demons.
Oh yeah,
long tube filled with demons.
Awesome.
So that guy is the pits, but.
And that was right when that was becoming like a cultural mainstay, like a channel that was devoted entirely to like stay-at-home Christians
TBN
with nothing better to do than like donate to they say they spent all their funds to send Bibles to Ecuador, and I was like, what about me? And they're like, don't worry, son, you're on a first class flight to the pearly gates or whatever it is that they say.
Right.
I love that whole interaction with his parents. You can tell he doesn't go home very often, doesn't see them very much. They're just like brainwashed in front of the TV. He's eating out of a can that's just labeled food, and it's just some slop. It's just like some dark like slop. Put it on a plate, son. You'll enjoy it more. Couldn't enjoy it anymore, ma. Just like their life is shit, Yeah, I mean, I really like when it touches on just how kind of either brainwashed or fucking mentally ill the people in the older generations are. Like the Repo Men are all insane. They're crazy people. Like they're all very just kind of. And I mean, the other guy who's driving, the older man who's driving the car around, has literally had a lobotomy. So it's like, it's saying like these older generations are either insane at this point or they have no idea what's going on. They're just these people who are, kind of a product of this like dystopia, but not quite dystopian like world around them. And the younger people don't really know what else to do but like be rebellious punks and go and thrash around and end up in and out of jail cells. Like everyone in this movie is on, they've all hit like a dead end. Even Otto's best friend is he's trying to become a fry cook, and there's that line where he says there's a room to move as a fry cook, and he's really the only one in the movie who has like opportunities moving forward, because like where's a Repo Man gonna go from there? Where's like a punk off the street gonna go? Everybody's kind of given up on life in this movie.
Right.
It's kind of nihilistic in that way, but it's like the Verhoeven RoboCop nihilism, where it's like funny, gleeful nihilism. You know what I mean? It strikes that balance. Yeah.
This is just a random detail about like me watching the movie. I'm looking at this Otto guy and I'm like, why does he look like Martin Sheen? And it turns out that that's his son.
Yeah.
Did you know this, Zach? That this is, I'm the last to figure this out, that Martin Sheen's name is not Martin Sheen. It's like Raul Estevez or something.
Yes.
And Charlie Sheen is Emilio Estevez's brother. And I guess dude, it was messing with me because I'm looking at him like, that's so gotta be Martin Sheen, right?
They
but then I was like, with that track, they do. No, they all have the same.
Yeah, they look exactly the same hair. They have the same hair.
Yeah, that messed with me. I felt like I had uncovered a bombshell, but apparently I'm just I'm caught in the explosion. Actually, I didn't.
I think that the acting in this movie is interesting to talk about because Harry Dean Stanton is
the late
playing
great.
it straight.
the late great.
Yes, he's a character actor. He's playing it straight. I'm this grizzled, guy who has nothing better to do than work on commission, especially essentially stealing cars.
Right.
That's like all he's really had in his life. It's all he knows, and he's passing it on down to this younger punk. And on the flip side, we have Dick Rude, who plays a Duke. The punk who's just like a goober. He's like fresh out of prison. He's like robbing stores. That scene where he's sitting outside the liquor store and he's like basically proposing to that other punk.
Yeah.
He goes, now that it's just us, why don't we settle down? I mean,
start a family. Everyone's
house.
doing it.
I want you to have my baby. Yeah, it seems like a thing to do. And then he starts crying. And she's like, you asshole, gives him a bump of coke. And he's like, let's go do the job. He goes and robs a store. He's got like a flannel on and like a tux. He's wearing like jeans and like a flannel tied around his waist and then tux. Yeah. And then there's, he has those lines like, let's get sushi and not pay. Fuck this. Let's go do some crimes. Like he to me, like really, this movie works on so many different fronts for me. Like it's such like a great like ironic comedy. It's such like a great commentary of what was going on in Americana at the time, and at the same time it's this pulpy like blue collar Repo Man story with sci-fi shit going on at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean it's like I said before, it's a bunch of movies all kind of colliding and bleeding into one another, and into just this like total what the fuck, this is amazing last like 20 minutes.
This actually reminds me, this is an opportunity to read at least one of these Letterboxd reviews that we gathered up. I'll read this one just because it's Jesus, if I can find it. It's directly related to what you just said, Danny.
The sushi line.
Oh, here it is. This is from Monday Siegel. You can make a movie about something, you can make a movie about nothing, and you can make a movie about everything. Repo Man falls into each category. That's what makes it so special. On a related note, I once went for sushi and skipped the bill, but I felt terrible and returned the next day to pay. I really want to be a punk, but I guess I'm just a P word.
Just a pussy.
Hey.
We're not afraid to say that here on the Medium War. Hey, we're a bunch of boys. We talk about burps and farts, and we're boys on it. Come on,
burps and farts.
We're a bunch of boys.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that like
don't be a Ben Shapiro about it.
Oh my gosh.
P word.
I watched The Repo Man. By myself last night, and I really hated it. I think it had too much to say about Reagan, who was one of the greatest presidents that we ever had.
That's a really good.
That's a pretty good.
That's a really good.
Thank you. It's too good. I scared myself with that. Yeah, no, yes, I for sure think that like this is and obviously since we're reviewing it, we're talking about it, like we can help the audience out if they haven't seen this. Like having that context going in, I think will help you kind of withstand some of the scenes or some of the parts of the movie that seem disconnected because you know that there's like a larger theme at play. For me, those last 20 minutes were like discordant. I didn't know like how much of it was supposed to be real. And then like at a certain point I was like, well, maybe I should just stop taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
But now also knowing that there was that weight to it with the Reaganism and everything, I'm wondering like, at what point does the movie give up on being such a heavy commentary? Where does it turn into just a full comedy? Or a full
here's what
whatever.
I want to say about the balance it strikes, because the balancing act in this movie is like insane. It is that commentary on consumerism and the moral majority, and at the same time it's like this is a movie, like we're kids, like they're young filmmakers, and they're like let's just fucking have fun. Them taking off in the car is escapism. It's them escaping from this bullshit reality all around them.
Oh, well, how old was
everybody is so downtrodden by everything that's going on in the world, they just want to get out.
I'm sorry. How old was Alex Cox when he made this?
Alex Cox was in his 20s.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's young. Yeah.
That also frames things for me.
He actually he made a Western later on with that actor I was going off about. Holy shit, Dick Rude. Sorry, and he's like completely different than that. Dick Rude has very few film appearances. but he's so over the top and like hammy and like cornball and Repo Man, and then he's in a western that Alex Cox did, where he's like kind of a, I mean, I think he's a pretty good like villain, like serious actor. I think he kind of works too. But that's I think that actor is underrated because he's in a few Cox films where he gives very different performances. Repo Man is definitely his most over the top, but that's kind of by design.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Harry Dean Stanton, when you go on speaking of Wikipedia, he's first billed Harry Dean, which I guess would make sense. He would have been the biggest star at the time. But his role in the movie isn't like, he shows up a little later on, and he's not that like influential as far as where the plot goes. So I guess he might have been used to help sell the movie.
Well, his character is what brings Otto into the world of the Repo Men, and then eventually he gets fired, and as is, he just kind of had a dead-end job, so when he gets fired, he falls into that depression. There's that scene that they play it straight. It's like a straight dramatic scene. It's when he's driving around with Otto, and it's after he's been fired, and he goes, we used to communicate so well all the time. What the fuck happened? Otto's silent, and he goes, answer me, and pulls the key out of the ignition. Car stops. They kind of just stare at each other, and he opens the door and gets out of the car and walks away while they're just like on the street, you know?
Mm.
So he's the dramatic linchpin of the film.
Yes.
To me,
right.
like everything else is way out there, gets like really surrealist comedy, sci-fi, but Harry Dean Stanton is the one who grounds the film.
Yeah. For sure.
And even in the end, I mean, Otto and Miller, they take off and they have this whimsical, probably time travel thing going on. But right before that, Harry Dean Stanton gets shot.
Yeah.
Nothing that happens to him in this film is whimsical. He's the one who, like, he's like a real guy who, like, real shit happens to. He loses his job, he gets shot, he's in the hospital. He finally gets that Chevy Malibu that all the Repo Men have been trying to track down, and he loses it. He gets shot and he's probably bleeding out. Meanwhile, Otto goes and has this fun, freewheeling sci-fi adventure, you know?
It seems like the kind of movie that, were it made today, would be an absolute vehicle for like an Academy Award for whoever Harry Dean Stanton's character is being played by.
Definitely.
Like it wouldn't have the science fiction stuff in it, and it would be just like this Repo Man who's it's like 2 hours of watching him be depressed.
I mean, if it was made today, if it was made today, it would have been Sorry to Bother You. Like it's in the same lineage.
No, I was just about to say, Sorry to Bother You has like real dramatic performances where people weren't nominated in acting roles at the Oscars because like the movie surrounding it is so off the wall.
That's,
you know?
actually
it's
good comparison.
The same as Repo Man. I mean, Repo Man has real performances, but the film is so not for everyone. First of all, it's like the definition of like a not for everyone movie. It's so like punk and surreal and stoner comedy and it's sci-fi. I mean, the movie has like really like impressive, even like the effects for the time. I mean, they're pretty impressive. I mean, I know that they're supposed to look like B-movie effects, but the car,
the glowing green car did impress me.
I thought the glowing green car was CGI for the longest time, and when it's flying around the city, it is. But it's actually, they covered the car like head to toe in glow in the dark paint, like the seats, everything. It's glow in the dark paint. I thought it was like early, like kind of premature CGI.
It looks really good,
but it's like a really creative, practical effect. Yeah.
I don't know if this was the case for any of y'all who also saw it for the first time. The beginning especially, but there were parts of this movie that reminded me of Men in Black.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning where he gets pulled over and then like
that line he says, what's in the trunk? The guy goes, you don't want to know, man.
Right.
How great is that?
Well, dude, I mean, what a way to open a movie, because he gets erased from his ankles up.
That seems great.
And then
deleted.
Like
that's the scene they're watching in Halloween 2018 that I mentioned earlier. When she's babysitting the kid, she puts on a Repo Man for the kid she's babysitting.
Yeah, there's obviously, like, I take notes while I'm watching movies, and part of it is like me taking notes about serious things, and part of it is just my reactions to things in the moment. But like, there was a point where like the movie had proceeded obviously for like 30-40 minutes beyond that, and I was like, wait, I forgot that this movie is about aliens, or is it? You know,
it's about everything.
Yeah, because then he mentions the guy driving the car, who does have a really, Danny, you mentioned this, he has a really effective scene in the alleyway where he's getting held up for the car by these punks.
Yes, I love that.
And he's
scene.
like,
my favorite was always the robbery, but this time around, that was my like you said, that was my favorite scene.
It's a creepy way, and it's an effective way to get rid of this character, and like because we know what's going to happen, and we're like, don't open the trunk, but we know he's going to do it.
He's a dumb punk. Why wouldn't he open the trunk?
Yeah, right, exactly. But there's a point where he's driving Otto around, and he's talking about like, they have these bombs that can erase you. Like they don't erase physical stuff, just organic matter. And I was like, oh, is that what he has in the car? So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess you're saying that it is actually straight up aliens, but we never see inside the trunk.
It's like alien, like neutron bomb technology.
Oh, okay. It's both.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. And it's obliterating people, which is explained by the bomb, but the extraterrestrial elements of it are explained by the fact that it's an alien car that probably came from like a government site somewhere.
Yeah. Aren't they in like Nevada in this movie, or?
I think they're in LA. They're in
LA. Close enough though, because Area 51 is like a few miles away.
The ugliest parts of LA that they could find.
Yes, really run down.
It's like the gritty 70s LA.
Yeah.
Even though it's 84, it has that 70s carryover aesthetic.
Right. Zach, I know you had suggested that we talk about favorite lines. I do have one, and it's such a throwaway thing, but I'm wondering if I know Danny could quote this thing backwards, but I'm wondering what your favorite quote actually was, Zach, if it wasn't taken.
No, Danny actually said it earlier. It was it's the fuck this, let's go do some crimes. I think that was I think at the point of the movie where I was like, oh, I understand. I've failed, and I've taken this movie too seriously, and I've paid the price. Now here we are. Yeah. That's when I realized my fatal mistake. So that has to be my favorite line.
Yeah. Wes, do you have one?
I do. I'm sorry. A bug just decided to assert himself in my house.
Oh, gotcha.
You can just cut that out. I do.
I'll keep that.
No, I'm keeping it.
I really dig. I can't even quote the exact line because I don't know it. But the Wolf of Wall Street-esque Henry Dean Stanton and Emilio Estevez in the car, in that when he's like every Repo Man I know.
Another Repo Man is not on speed.
Yeah. So I thought that whole bit was pretty interesting and funny and economic.
That's a good scene.
And then they're looking at the yuppies who were like playing tennis, like the tennis playing yuppies are getting in their car, and he goes, "Ordinary fucking people, man. I hate them. Ordinary because like they like punks and Repo Man are like both outsiders." And so that's why they're kind of crossing over. I love that whole scene where Miller is monologuing. He's the mechanic who is kind of chosen by the alien car at the end. And he doesn't know how to drive, and yet he's the one who takes off in the car. They're talking about how people they disappear and come back. He's talking about like the population going up and down, and he describes it as a product of UFOs that people see, which are actually time machines. And it's such a trippy conversation. He goes into the cosmic unconsciousness, and he says, give you an example, show you what I mean. Suppose you're thinking about plate of shrimp. Suddenly someone will say like plate or shrimp or plate of shrimp out of the blue. No explanation. No point in looking for one either. It's all part of the cosmic unconsciousness. And that the line in itself is good, but moving forward, there's like 2 or 3 scenes in the movie where they'll go past a storefront and it'll say like plate of shrimp, $5.99, shrimp plate, get it here, like something like that. Like that line, it's the movie is engaging in that cosmic unconsciousness that's talking about, like where you see something in a dream and then you're walking around in real life and it's like, what the fuck? Like I dreamed about that last night. That's what that's the effect it's trying to capture, but with the plate of shrimp effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of detail in this movie.
It's a really cool detail.
Yeah.
That you definitely don't pick up on the first time you watch it. I didn't pick up on that until like the 3rd or 4th time I saw it.
For sure. And knowing it now, I probably would rewatch this just to like find those things and kind of for the satisfaction of looking for them. My favorite line is it's really like it's inconsequential. I think it might even be ad-libbed, but it's Otto goes to visit the elderly black woman whose car he's trying to repossess. And then like he gets denied, so he goes out and tries to just straight up steal it anyway. And then they all come out and start beating him up. They pull him out of the car, and he's like, "Hey guys, wait!" And he says, "I like music too, man." And then they smash him with a guitar, and it has the Hanna-Barbera like cartoon sound effect.
The acoustic guitar crashing
sound.
Yeah,
bang! Like I just thought, like there was something so ignorant about that that I loved.
There's a funny scene later on where one of the villains, like the bodyguard of that metal hand woman, they're like these Aryan race, like blue-eyed, blonde-haired. They're the villains. They're in those suits, you know what I'm talking about. And the black woman Marlene, who Otto is a crush on, she's fighting one of those guys and knocks him on the ground. She raises that stool above his head, and it's very clearly ADR. They just had like the idea to do it in post. But you can hear him go, "No, not my face," and you see her throw the stool down. And he goes, "Ah, my face." Everything about there's so many like little hidden jokes like all throughout the movie. Like when they're doing that shootout on the stairwell, there's a voice that goes on over the loudspeaker, and it says, please no shooting in the stairwell or something like that. There's just like there's like Edgar Wright style like hidden jokes in like every scene.
Just by way of giving the audience a definition if they don't know it, ADR is what is automated dialogue placement. You will be surprised how many movies this is in, because sound is so is so unpredictable when you're filming. But it's basically, if you know, when a character is speaking, if that actor couldn't be heard, they bring him into a studio later on to repeat the line, and they try to dub it over. Usually what they do is
actor to turn their head,
turn around to mask it with physicality, but sometimes it's just straight up like you can notice it.
It's all over superhero movies because
it's all over Justice League.
It is, but I mean, it is, but also generally you don't notice it, but because the post is so long on superhero movies, it's all over those movies.
And you realize like, oh, there was this explosion that was like way too loud, and I couldn't hear Scarlett Johansson say what she had to say.
I want to play the character from Ghost in the Shell. That line was lost.
I knew you were gonna do it, which is why I didn't do it. I knew you were gonna take it.
I love whitewashing Hollywood. They dub over it.
What I was telling Danny, I don't know if you have any other points to make, Dan, before we go to the ratings, but what I was telling you is that if it weren't for this show, the reason that I like this idea that we have is that like I would never have watched Repo Man if it wasn't for, even with Danny recommending it to me, if it wasn't for the podcast. And that's not even because like I would have seen it and thought, I'm not going to watch that. It just would have never come across my radar because it's not the type of thing that I watch. So hopefully it's the same for the people listening, because that is our entire goal, is to, you know, and obviously, like we said last week, you know, there's not as much connection between Godzilla versus Kong and Repo Man, except for
I disagree. All
right, Wes, here we go. This is Wes' time to shine.
And this will be my my thing in every single episode of trying to find the connection between the I think Repo Man is a very political genre film that is engaging in its politics, and it's about a specific era, and it's attempting to like satirize and dig into that era via genre in a way that the original Godzilla and King Kong are doing.
Right.
But Godzilla and King Kong are the inverse of it. You know what I mean? Like it's attempting to depoliticize these characters that are political. And like, you know, you look at a movie like Godzilla, and we just talked about it the last thing, but that isn't too dissimilar from this. That is a genre movie that is attempting to grapple with an era that people were afraid during. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think
you're talking about Gojira from
I'm talking about Gojira.
1954.
Yeah. And I think they're the inverse of each other. I think they're both genre movies. They're both popcorn movies, but I think one is attempting to really use genre as a vehicle to talk about politics, and one is attempting to completely sanitize any political context from it. You know what I mean? And that's interesting.
Good, Anakin. Good.
Thank you. I'll be here every single episode with my.
Godzilla versus Kong is a very apolitical film.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because it erases all the intent behind Godzilla to begin with. So much so that the man who ends up killing Godzilla in the original, his son is in Godzilla versus Kong, and like now he's the villain and Godzilla is the good guy. You know, it's so far removed from any
or
any
his
semblance
grandson,
of what the
because
original intent was.
yeah, not to pollute this segment too much with the last one, but part of the reason I rewatched 2014 is to figure out, like, is Ken Watanabe's Serizawa supposed to be related to the original one anyway? It's still unclear. He's named after the director of the original movie and that character. His name is Ichiro Serizawa, I think. So, but
great.
It's come so far. And the other thing that I forgot to mention during that segment was, Danny, obviously last week we talked a lot about or a little bit about intent, director's intent, creator's intent, and how once the movie is released, you don't have control over how people perceive it, right? And so it's interesting in comparing that to what we see with King Kong, because, like, again, with these directors saying, no, it's not about slavery, but a bunch of people decades later being like, this is about slavery, you know, it's interesting, like how, and that goes both ways, because you can have that happen, and then you can have a movie be misinterpreted and valorized by a group you would want no association with. But is that interpretation still valid when you look at something like, I don't know, like Fight Club, which is not the best example, but
even They Live, even They Live has been used as a QAnon, a proto QAnon document, which is not the intent of John Carpenter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's, I mean, this is another conversation that we can keep having in the cast, because I think it's really profound.
Well, to piggyback off of what was said, and it relates to Repo Man, the intent was to portray Reaganism as a thing that's like inherently inhuman. They Live is saying, like, this is bullshit, and if you've been hypnotized, what if there was a magical pair of glasses that could make you see this manipulation for what it really is? You know, this propaganda for what it really is.
Yeah,
they're like propaganda glasses, and so yeah. I mean, like we've already said, They Live and Repo Man are kind of a good.
They're sister movies.
They
like
complement each other. Yeah, they're complementary. Yeah, they'd be a good duology.
Let's rate it, shall we, gentlemen? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, and I don't know if we're still doing this, but watching the movie, I thought of this. Last week we did would we remake it or not, and what the creative team would be. And as I was watching it, I was thinking about this consciously, and I actually think, I mean, we already said Sorry to Bother You is essentially taking these ideas and updating them, even down to it being in California. You know what I mean? I actually think, but I think if you
when
wanted,
I saw Sorry to Bother You, it was reminding me of Repo Man while I was watching it. So it's so funny that you bring it up.
But I think actually, if you were to do, if the studios were like, Repo Man IP that we have that we'd like to make into a movie, I think you could actually give it to Boots Riley, and he would do something completely different with it.
That'd be cool.
I think you just have to cast an everyman the way Emilio Estevez is kind of an everyman in this.
Yeah, you would have to find a new like band of outsiders, because punk isn't a thing anymore. And even if it was, you would never be able to get a soundtrack like that again with like original music from these super famous punk bands. I mean, it would just never happen. So that's why I think it's kind of
it'd have to be like SoundCloud hip hop, something like that.
SoundCloud rappers, like trap music and stuff.
But
then. Well, I was going to ask Wes, because I think that what we can do in terms of combining this with our predetermined rating system for the Morgue movies is that if you, I mean, sometimes you do whatever you want, but like if you talk about potentially remaking it, maybe does that coincide with a reanimated ranking?
Yeah.
Like, reanimate?
Yeah. I think you could reanimate
this original movie into public discourse, and in so doing, how would I remake it just as a thought experiment?
Perfect. Yeah. I think I would reanimate it. I think I'd reanimate it because I think it's a solid movie that's ideas are actually sometimes overshadow the quality of the movie. Like I think it's a really interesting and fun movie, but I think it has the same issue as They Live, which is like the ideas in the movie are so like alive and popping that if you were to remake it, you could actually find a way to strike a better balance. Because I think there are times where I'm actually more interested in like the fact that all of the labels have a generic thing. And I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. But I'm less interested in like Emilio Estevez as a character. And that might be by design. But I think if you were to remake it with someone like Boots Riley, who's able to do character work and satire at the same time, I think you could actually get something really interesting. So I'm going to go with Reanimated.
Solid. Zach?
Wow. Yeah. So I, the thing is I recognize. Actually, screw it. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna bury it. I didn't like this movie, and I know that my opinion is probably like not correct. Like I know what this movie was trying to do. I know it was intentional in everything that it wanted to do. So I respect it for that. And I think, again, agreeing with Justin, I think knowing a lot of the context for this movie really would have helped me, because I went into this thinking it was going to be something, I guess, else. Oh no, maybe I didn't have any thoughts on this movie. I
still think it is great to go in blind, personally.
For me, it felt like this was and again, intentionally, a play written by a middle schooler for drama class. Just in the way that things unfolded, I was like, the way that dialogue happened, I was like, oh, that was so weird. And again, I knew that this was intentional eventually, but it still kind of annoyed me. So yeah, I'm gonna say bury it. I could be more political about this and be like,
damn,
no, this is there. It will always have something, but I don't care for it.
Damn.
Okay, I'm feeling it, man.
I take it.
Mic drop.
Listen, when Wes went Reanimated, I was like, this is going to be interesting, because this might be the first time that we all have different rankings. Even though it's only the second episode, but like, I'm going to go Embalm personally. It didn't move the needle for me too much, but after talking through it, in this session, I appreciate it more. And I do think I would rewatch it exactly as it is. But I think like it's very much a product of its era.
Yeah.
And so like if you do like reanimate it, like recirculating it into popular discourse, obviously Republicans are still doing a lot of the same stuff that they were doing. Reagan is sainted,
Yeah.
is sainted in the Republican Party, right? But
yes.
But I think that like if you were to redo it, it would force it to be updated to something that is more current, because times have changed. So I think just because of that, based on the fact that it is so connected to Reaganism, I would embalm it, because I think that it is capturing that time, and it is of that time.
Yeah.
So Dan, it's
by
embalm,
we're talking about purely from like a current relevance standpoint. Like, does embalm mean you were lukewarm on the movie as a whole, or you just don't think like you could make it relevant for today?
It's a little bit of both.
Like,
I think like with the concept of listen, we're talking through our process for y'all to hear, but I think with the concept of the morgue, right? It's like we're looking at a movie that has been kind of forgotten, right? Or like time has passed and like we don't really talk about it anymore. So inherently, by looking at it, we're reviewing whether or not like there's something still there, and so for me, if I say embalm it, that means that there is something there, but I would watch it for more like, I don't want to say academic purposes, but whatever the adjacent word to that would be, where it's like, okay, if I want to watch a bunch of movies that are from the 80s about the 80s, then Repo Man would be on that list, because I know that it's commenting on something directly that was happening there, But that doesn't mean that like, yeah. So I'm interested to know what your ranking would be, Dan.
Well, our highest is Reanimate, of course.
No, our highest is Immortal, actually.
Immortal.
Well, Immortal. I mean,
Immortal?
the movie's fucking immortal to me. I mean, if ever there was a movie that's immortal to me, it's this one. It's so much fun. The ideas are great. It's so endlessly quotable. It looks gorgeous. It's very gritty. It's got that like ironic B movie sci-fi that's just always fun to see play out. It's like, you can tell these people are having so much fun. Like, everyone's just having a good time on this set, and it's infectious. When you watch the movie, it makes me so happy. Like, I put on scenes from Repo Man when I'm feeling down, because it's just like funny and rebellious, and you feel like you're in on the joke as an audience member. Maybe that's just for me. Justin, I know you said it's a product of its time, which is something I said last week about Black Narcissus. Which when I said it, it was to demean Black Narcissus, because Black Narcissus has fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
When I say Repo Man is a product of its time, I would be saying that as a compliment to the film, because it was something that was brave enough to say, fuck all of you, you don't get it. And the people who do get it, like, you're gonna really get it. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean,
Especially
this is like
in
the
it.
definition of a cult movie. You either you get it or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you thought all the Bible thumping extremism at the time was insane, then chances are you probably like Repo Man. You liked it back then, and you probably like it now as an adult. I saw this not even in the 80s. I mean, I was more familiarized with the historical context moving forward, but even as a kid, I mean, it's so like fun and rebellious, and the music hits, and it's endlessly quotable, and it's so unexpected. There's no way you can see that ending coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dan, when did
Everything
you
about
watch
this movie hits for me. There's a reason it's in my top 5. I watched this in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a good time all around. It's the definition of a fun movie, in my opinion. I cannot think of a movie that's more fun than Repo Man.
Beautiful. I'm glad that this happened.
So, there we go.
I like the 4 different ratings here. I think each of us has had an opportunity to kind of state where we are. So wrapping up now, I know what I'm next up for the pick, and I know what my pick is. It took me a while to figure it out, but
cool.
I think that this is, and we'll talk about the consensus choice off the air because I think there's different options. But this is a movie that has been that is already kind of recirculating by proxy because there are so many movies that are trying to do it.
Here we go.
Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon.
What a good pick!
Yeah,
what a good pick.
Thank you, man. I watched it in college for the first time when I had to actually
get some fucking Kurosawa in this bitch.
When I had to actually do a stage version of the play. And so there's a lot of stories for Rashomon that I have to tell that are involved with the watching of the movie and also being in a version of it. Yeah. And I'm excited to bring it up next week because then, there's a lot of stuff, like I said, that's tried to recapture that storytelling to mixed effect. That's gonna be a wrap on the Morgue today. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is our second episode. If you want, you can check out our first on YouTube, the Podbean app, and also Google Podcasts. We're getting ourselves up and running on Spotify and Apple. It just takes a little longer because they're bougie, but we will be there shortly. And, as always, keep watching movies. Peace.
Later.
Love you guys.